Welcome back to the Tez Talk Show. I'm your host, Montez Swartz. There's been a lot of exciting developments in New Jersey lately, and we can't wait to discuss with you guys today. But before we get to that, today's subject is education, as I invited two teachers, one student teacher, one ex-teacher, administrator, now turned to CEO of her own workshop company. Both these women today taught me in different phases of my life. The former, a student teacher from my advanced placement government course, and the latter, my 5th grade teacher. But before we get to the ladies, let's hit up Dan's Corner with Daniel Zepsik.
A new survey from the website solitary.com states the Whole Foods Market on 135 Green Street in Jersey City, New Jersey, ranked second in terms of grocery stores with the worst lines. After the initial shock passes of somebody wasting their time to do such a survey, New Jersey citizens wonder why the rest of our grocery stores didn't crack the top 10.
The survey also states the 2 grocery stores in Jersey City were in the top 10 ranking for grocery stores with the worst quality of food, explaining why Jersey City decided to become the weed capital of New Jersey. This is truly upsetting as questions from Jersey City residents emerge, such as where can they get quality and affordable food for their children, and why is Miss Marvel fighting for the city?
Tolls on the New Jersey Expressway increased by 3% starting on March 1st. This, compounded with the increase in gas prices in October, means I'll be riding a unicycle to set from now on. Disney World just made a decision to increase their ticket prices, including a $10 increase to the Animal Kingdom, because that's everybody's favorite part of Disney, the non-singing animals.
Rumors say that Disney is increasing profits to gain return from the severe profit loss from 2023. Many feel bad for the company that made their childhood, but I feel no sympathy for a company that spent $300 million on a movie called Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania. The saddest part is that is one of the few Disney movies that broke even last year. Our first guest is a final year's master's student at Rutgers University, where she also received her bachelor's in history in 2023. She completed her student teaching as a social studies teacher at Neptune High School this past year. Welcome, Jenna Unger.
Hey Tez, thanks for having me.
No problem. How are you doing today?
I am doing really great. I'm so happy to see you again.
Yes. Yeah, I had Miss Unger as my student teacher during advanced placement, government and politics.
Yeah, AP GoPo.
AP GoPo.
That was a beast.
Yeah, for those who don't know, all the AP classes usually have like these fun little names that people have for them. Like AP United States History is A-Push. I'm trying to think of any other fun ones.
AP
like
Hug.
AP
Human
Hug,
Geography.
AP Lit.
It's lit.
AP Lang, so they all have like these fun names. So AP GoPo was what we called it. So how have you been?
I have been doing great. I finished my student teaching at Neptune, but the separation anxiety was huge. I really, really missed being there. So I had to go back to being a full-time student essentially. And that was a really tough adjustment. But I get to sub during the week, during the days, because I have night classes. Okay. Looking for jobs. I sub at Monmouth Beach and Neptune still.
Oh, okay.
I'm booked through Monmouth Beach though for the next month or so I haven't been able to be down in Neptune as much, which is a bummer. But I'm in Neptune. I do K-8 through there because they don't have, Monmouth Beach I do K-8 because they don't have a high school. They all feed into shore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know there's a few schools that do K through 8.
Yeah, it's one building. It's super, super small. Not at all what I was used to after being, in Neptune. Yeah, with multiple elementary schools.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So we're here to talk about your experiences as a student teacher for our viewers that I know are education majors that are going to experience in the future, and also for outsiders who want to understand what is it like to be a student teacher.
So when you first walk into that classroom, so when I walked in with you and when you were there, I was only there part-time. I was there 2 days a week. So you're walking in to observe, but you also need to get some first hands-on experience. And it's awkward at first, I have to say. Everyone's used to being the student at the desk, but suddenly you're on the other side of the desk and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. And that's definitely how I felt. I was excited to teach. I knew I was passionate about it. But then the kids look at you like, oh my God, who is this stranger who just walked into my classroom? And you try and be hands-on with them, but you're new in their domain. So they're like,
yeah, it's very
talking to me?
Yeah, it's very upsetting because especially through K through 12, it's mostly about getting a regimen and getting things familiarized, and like for students to constantly not do the same thing every day, but do the same like workout, let's say, of like you constantly same teacher, and then you guys have like a set activity, and it's like reinforced. And so you come in and then you're this new element, and it's like,
so not only are they learning you, but you are also learning them. Like when you go in as a teacher, you know, okay, they're going to have their own rules. They're going to have their own routine. They're going to have their own inside jokes and stuff. And you are the outsider to that. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just part of the process, but it is some getting used to. And then when I did my full time, I started with one section of just my own kids. And it was definitely easier because they were used to me from the get-go. But even so, when you have your cooperating teacher, the person who like looks over you, when you're doing that, they see them in the room. Suddenly there's a problem. They don't look at me anymore. They go to the person who's like still in charge. So that was difficult for me at first. I'm like, oh, why don't they take me seriously? And it's like, they know I'm a student teacher, you know? But eventually, like any new teacher to student relationship, like you build it much more. And I'm happy to say I like had a great rapport with a lot of my kids and had really, really great relationships with them.
So was that like your first time? So when it comes to student teaching, do they just throw you guys in?
Yeah. We have classes to prepare us. So you have some classes about like, okay, here's basic classroom management skills. Here's like, a little bit of like how to make a basic lesson plan or a basic project. But then you go in there and you start to learn the unteachable. Where it's like, okay, you're learning all of this stuff in theory, but suddenly when a kid like maybe isn't so happy with you and starts cursing you out, you're like, oh, this was not in the lecture or in the textbook.
They don't prepare you guys for like behavioral?
Not at first. At first they, will give you the basics like, okay, like here's, like some basic intervention.
I feel like that should be something that like is like not, I wouldn't say first year of your bachelor's, because I feel like that scares some people off. But
absolutely.
Like, I feel like that most people should be like a year two, like oh yeah, because they're human beings, they're going to like
and that's
and not like immature human beings. Just that too of like they're going to act a certain way.
Yeah, they will prepare you with like some basic toolkit things, but a lot of it is learning on the fly. Because you can prepare yourself all you want outside of the situation, but the second you're in that situation and you have to like have a human reaction to someone like yelling at you or being upset with you or just like a bad day in general, you're like, oh God, like the toolkit. Sometimes the toolkit gets thrown to the wayside. But it's fine. That's part of the process. It's definitely not for everyone. My sister all the time is like, if I did what you did, I would cry or yell at a kid. I'm like, yeah, you got good days and bad days.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people do have an interest though in developing like and teaching people. I feel like a lot of people are actually very interested in it. It's more of like there's two major things that hold people back from becoming teachers.
Oh yeah.
Which is of course the personality conflicts of the students, and then of course the pay.
Yeah.
Which do you want to talk about?
So with the first one, with maybe a personality conflict with the students, it takes a lot of patience and learning. And I was lucky to have discipline. Like I was really lucky to have a cooperating teacher who was patient with me, trying to build up my own patience. Patience is like the key thing here. And I'm an okay patient person. Like before this whole thing, once I got through it, and I kind of had my my mentor guide me through. Like here's how you like keep yourself from blowing a gasket. It gets better with time.
I feel like you were also in a lucky scenario of that your section was an honors course too.
I was beyond lucky with that. And I know going into my first job, I will not be likely handed that situation, and I'm prepared for it. I've seen, I've shadowed in other classrooms to still get that experience, to still, see how other teachers handle classroom management differently, to see, different kinds of maybe personalities of students, combinations even, because, it's not like all my students were great. I really think they were just lovely, excellent people, but the way sometimes when you have certain groups of people with each other, you're like, oh my God, why are they acting like this suddenly? And it's like, oh, because they're probably with this person who has a different personality
Yes.
trait, and they brings out maybe like not the best in each other.
I had this discussion once in a psychology course of, as a man, like if you're a man and you start, the more other men are around you, the dumber the whole room gets. Of like we all just I would say I'm pretty smart, but the minute I hang out with my male friends, my intelligence like bombs down. I feel like, and it shows that like the best courses I had were mostly women were in the room
And
leading the conversation.
And there's been studies on this where schools do not benefit men as much as women. They are not designed for males. They mature at a different rate. They go through a different process of growing up. They're far more attuned to benefit women because it's just how we mature and how we interact with each other at those ages. So sometimes, I have to think like, okay, are my boy students like actually like having a problem right now, or is this just not a conducive environment for them right now? And then I have to again think on my feet and say, okay, how do I make this a better learning situation for them? And it's tough because then suddenly it's not just one kid, it's like 10, 20, maybe 30 if you have a huge class, and you're like, I have to manage all these kids' needs at once. And it's a lot, but I like it. And then the pay, I mean, I'm not, like people say, like, you shouldn't do it for the money, do it for the kids. But at the end of the day, I do have to pay bills.
Yes.
And I'm really lucky my parents are able to let me live with them and, want me still around the house and are not sick of me yet. But it's definitely a challenge.
It's a major thing. In my honors government course that I'm taking right now, we did a quick poll to see how many people would be teachers if the chance arose, like, and the percent came out to 93% of people would want to be a teacher if the pay was just better.
Yeah.
And the environment, because do you enjoy having your summers off, I'm assuming?
Oh my God, I love it. But I also work during my summers because I have the time to do that. And again,
I know a lot of other teachers have second gigs. I know because we live near the beach, I see a lot of my teachers working at the beach during the summer.
You bet. Yeah. I mean, I don't mind having a second gig. I'm someone who personally likes to keep busy and likes having projects outside of things. But like sometimes I get burnt out like the rest of us, and I want to take a day off, and I might not be able to. But for a lot of, you have to have a really big passion to be able to understand the challenges you're walking into and, the lack of pay you might be getting in order to be able to say, no, I still want to do this. And that's not like a knock on anyone who decides they don't want to teach because they can't live with the pay. I get it. It's completely valid.
No, it's very understandable. My area of expertise is that I am a poli-sci student, but I do heavily focus on our education and like education policies. So have you seen any new policies coming forth? I know there's this new one talking about kids not being able to be on social media at a certain age that they're trying to put in New Jersey. Have you heard anything about that?
I've heard a little bit about it. I've heard murmurs, whispers, not honestly as much as I probably should, but there's obviously benefits and drawbacks to that. The benefits is social media is a big war that a lot of us are fighting in our classroom every day.
Everybody's on their
the
phone.
Scrolling in the lap.
Yeah.
I'm like, no one's looking down in your lap like a normal person. That's not a normal human thing that we do.
There's like no real, people don't even like truly consume it. It's just like there.
It's just there and it's mindless. But it's something I have to fight against. And of course, in an ideal world, I'm like, yes, let's not expose them to this all at once. But it's not so easy. We have, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and people bring those up as counter arguments all the time to, cutting off that, outlet for kids to have social media. We try to use it sometimes more as a tool in our classroom to engage with it, and that's sometimes helpful in getting more engagement, talking about maybe the ethics of social media, or imagining propaganda in the Soviet era. What if this happened then during if they had TikTok then? How would that change Stalin on TikTok?
Which is important as you as a younger teacher, you have firsthand experience with all the devices and apps that they're using, so you can bring it up in a conversation.
Yeah, we definitely try to, but it's not appropriate all the time. So sometimes I can't work social media into a conversation to engage my students, and then they're sitting there scrolling on Instagram or TikTok. I'm like, guys, the phones, please just put them away. I'm begging you.
Would you be pro a phone ban?
Ban is a strong word.
Okay.
It's a very strong word. But, you know, I tell my kids, like, look, you can be responsible with your own stuff. I think keeping them in like backpacks is a fair compromise, because I know a lot of kids need to like communicate home. Maybe they're in charge of picking up a sibling, or they have to work and they have to be in communication with their boss or coworkers. So having it on them, like, sure, but like, you know, being a little firm about like, keep it in your backpack, keep it in your pocket. Like, you know, I try to tell my students, like, okay, backpack or face down on your desk. Do they listen all the time? No, it's a war we all fight. But, you know, I think that would be a little more conducive.
Well, thank you for coming on for this segment. It was a real pleasure seeing you again.
I know, I missed you so much. I miss all of our time together. It was really, really great. And I'm just so happy we had this opportunity to connect again.
Yeah. Well, that was Jenna Unger on her thoughts of being a student teacher. This week's Cherry of the Week with Fernando Camarino.
This week's charity is Bridge of the Books Foundation. Former New Jersey attorney Abby Daly learned about the Bridge of Books Foundation through Ellen McNamara, Tricia's aunt. Abby had spent many years pursuing children's rights cases, first for the Office of the Public Defender and then for the Office of the Attorney General. Abby knew that she wanted to remain involved in the community and to continue working with organizations serving children. Always passionate about reading and knowing how crucial literacy is for all children, Abby started the New Jersey chapter of Bridge of Books Foundation in 2003. Their goal is to get as many books as possible into the hands of New Jersey's underserved children. We collect books through book drives, individual donations, publisher overstocks, and corporate donors. We also purchase books for special programs run throughout New Jersey and to supplement distributions with certain genres that are not typically part of collections that we receive. We distribute books through various agencies, community events, schools, and other venues. Check out Bridge of Books Foundations at bridgeofbookfoundation.org.
Our second guest today has served as an educator for over 17 years as a teacher and administrator. She now provides training and support for districts and teachers while working towards completing a Master's of Social Work, specializing in clinical practice with families and children. She has always felt dawned to work directly with children and change the field of public education on a federal level by combining research experience, institution, and helping others to take down the system bottom to top with problem solving. Now welcoming Jessica Wakula.
Hey Montez, so good to see you again.
Nice to see you. I forgot she was also my 5th grade teacher, guys. So it's been a while since I've seen her.
It sure has been about 9 or 10 years by now.
Yeah, that's crazy. Would you say I'm different or pretty much the same?
You're exactly the same. And that is the best part of all of this. You know, as a teacher who's old now and not in the classroom anymore, I really worried that my former students wouldn't come back and I wouldn't hear how I totally impacted their lives and inspired them to have talk shows. But just a couple of years ago, I got first found by one of my students in Neptune for my first year there. And I was so happy to realize that you guys were going to come back. So in the last year or two, you were one of a handful of kids that got back in touch with me, and it really felt cool, and it feels even cooler to be invited on here today and see how incredible you are doing and really bringing different perspectives and talking about cool stuff all on your self-motivated own. That's awesome.
All homemade here.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get to the conversation. So can you want to explain what education reform is for us?
Education Reframed is it's my consulting business where I really am just an expert in all things education, instruction, management, test scores, data, policies, you name it. I know about it or I can find the answer. But I was listening to your first guest, Jenna, talking about her student teaching experience. And I think that a lot of things that she said about teacher preparedness and how it's able to be utilized, or all the stuff they don't tell you that you're going to need to know or what to do. I really agree with a lot of what she said about you just kind of have to learn on the fly. And so I think that what I try and do now with Education Reframed is take all that information and fill in some of those gaps where new teachers, seasoned teachers, administrators might need a little more support. So especially after the pandemic, there was a lot of talk about burnout. So Education Reframed is reframing the problem, restoring the educator, and refocusing our approach to what we want to get done in the classroom.
That's really great. You talk about burnout from like after COVID, and I very much understand that, because like even for like, I was an all-A student, but even for me going back into the classroom, not just, you know, the Zooms, there was like this tiredness of like, oh my God, I have to be in this building 7:30 to like 2. And if you're somebody who does activities too, that's basically your whole day. So you're there basically 9 to 4. That's almost like a full-time job. And so a lot of people now are just getting exhausted from being in, like, because for us, education, for a lot of this generation now, it's like education was just, I was at home, and then it was just a part of your day. But like the step forward and socialize with a huge number of people. What is some concerns you've been seeing in education when it comes to students now that they're being conducted back into like mass groups again?
Yeah, so I think that COVID and some of the difficulties that we're seeing in classrooms, they kind of operate separate and together and compound. They're one problem and two, so I guess they're three, right? If that's our math. So one of the problems that we have, I think, in education is that our world has changed so much faster than our public education system.
Yeah.
And then COVID kind of put a wrench in all of that. So COVID, you know, going to school and teachers and parents, I think that my statistics are wrong here, but I've read a statistic about what percentage of our population spends its time in a school. Teachers, paras, custodians, security, students, you name it, a lot of our population spends a majority of their day in school buildings. And teachers are regimented, children are regimented, parents, we all follow a schedule, and then COVID
Just messed it
threw
up.
all that out the window. So I think that that's one aspect. And the other, like I said, is that technology is moving. You were talking about the cell phone bans and how would you be for or against that? But I think that in education, it's really important to learn how to work with the changes and with the changes and really implement them and utilize them in a responsible, balanced way. And in order to do that with kids, we have to do that as adults. And so if we're not modeling that balance and if we are not living that way, how can we possibly teach you to?
Yeah, and I see that as like a major problem in our system right now, is that these kids right now are developing like these skills that these teachers don't even know.
That's right.
And so it's becoming, how do I teach this kid who knows a software that can create an essay in 5 seconds? How am I supposed to even like explain to that kid how to write an essay if his thought process is, I just type in a few sentences and that's how an essay is made in his perspective, instead of doing the hard work.
How do you know if that essay is telling you that's right or not?
Exactly.
You can't know, right? So we don't have to write essays anymore. So why don't we stop writing essays? If we don't have to, we have to change how we access information.
And how we explain information as well.
Really how we get it. Because information is coming at us. I mean, I'm from the before times. I had textbooks. I'm from the before times with the internet too. There wasn't as much information, but now I think we have to use it responsibly. We have to learn how to think critically, and we have to teach kids and students and grown-ups how to listen to themselves and trust their intuition I don't know if you remember how much I used to talk about Judge Judy, but if it doesn't make sense, it isn't true. So if something doesn't make sense, I think as individuals and teachers and parents.
And I've been seeing this a lot of like kids, because of like their like God trust in Google, and their like just their belief that whatever is that we'll get something, like they can Google something, and if that's what it's the first thing that is stated, they will believe it 100%, and they will put it on a test, they'll put it in an assignment, but that thing couldn't be
That's
true.
a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
People, grown-ups do that everywhere, and that's why kids think it's okay.
They read the headlines. They
Yeah.
never even, people don't, I do not believe people read articles.
I don't believe people read anything. They do.
Because
That's why
I
they
feel
listen
like
to
people-
TikTok.
Like when it came to researching for this episode, like there was a lot of like these very shocking titles, which is a problem with media right now, is that it's title over substance, of like these titles are saying a lot more than what you're even writing. But I'm realizing people are just in conversations and even debates, they just been saying titles,
Right.
instead of actually saying statistics, instead of saying facts. People have been just saying, well, this is happening, and it's like, why is it happening?
Or show
And,
me.
like,
Prove it.
Yeah, and our society just, there's been a thing going on of like, people just don't know how to confirm their thoughts anymore. Of like, they'll just say a statement, but there's no more of it, especially because of how social media works, of like Twitter.
Yeah.
I was talking about earlier before cameras was on, and like I'm not on Twitter and X because I feel like it's a catch. It's you saying a statement, but it's not you don't even really need to defend it. It's just the statement. There's no
You
evidence.
could say whatever you want. You
and,
could just
like-
say whatever you want,
and there's no real consequences for you just
Right.
saying a statement.
right?
But that's not how our world should be working, and especially not how education should be working.
Correct.
Because I met people that use Twitter as their source of information, and I feel like that is the biggest danger coming to education, is that people aren't trusting our schools,
Correct.
and they're trusting more of like these Reddits, these conspiracy theories. And what do you think education has to do to become trusted again?
When you were in my class and I was reading a story to you aloud, I was reading a novel out loud because where you went to school and where I taught in Neptune, literacy rates in 5th grade were low. And the district, sorry, Neptune, if you're watching, the district really wanted me to teach reading to 5th graders a certain way. And that didn't make sense to me. And it didn't make sense for what I knew about you and what I knew about 5th graders and what I knew about kids. So I read to you, and I read the novels to you. And we were reading Bridge to Terabithia, and in one point in the story, a child dies. And I remember asking the class, like, what do you think happens after you die? And the class, like, seizes up, and everybody
Yeah.
gets really, your face, you made the same face in 5th grade. No, wait. Let me get there. Let me get there because it was so cool. I'm sorry. Because we got there and I said, what do you think happens? And kids go, well, that's religion. We can't have religion in schools. And I said, I'm not talking about religion. I want to know what you think. And I said, why do you think we can't talk about it? And you said to me, we're not supposed to talk about it. And I said, why? And you said, because other people think we're too young. And I said, but are you? I said, you guys know that happens, right? And you were like, yeah, no, we're not too young, but other people think that. And another student in our class, her brother had passed away. So by reading this novel and the content, I didn't care if you could read. I cared if you could think. And I cared if you felt confident and secure in what you were thinking and saying by questioning it. And I think that's what we have to do as society, is question what we think, to believe our ideas and believe ourselves before we go believing headlines.
That is so true. That is like, yeah.
I think
it is very, education has kind of changed a lot of like these test scores.
it's unrecognizable.
And it just, sometimes it doesn't, like there's good days, of course, like I was raised K through 12 public school. There'd be days that we did like do kind of like learn, but a lot of like these math courses and a lot of these English and math in particular just felt like I'm just here and I'm not learning anything, I'm doing something. I feel like I'm there for a regimen. Like it feels mandatory, and it just like the math doesn't relate to me, and like the stories we talked about didn't relate to me. And
100%.
the things, my favorite part about English would be these discussions, but I feel like something that's been lost is that we don't discuss the literature anymore. We just talk about, oh, this is what the author meant and that's it.
Yep.
That's where these conversations end of like, it's not about what did you think about it? And I feel that's one of the like one of the most offensive questions I've been seeing when it comes to these standardized tests, where it's like, what was the author's purpose? Why does that matter? And I'm saying this in the way of like, if I read a book and I took this inspiration from it, does that make it less meaning than what the author meant by writing it?
No.
And we've completely cut out that conversation at whole when it comes to reading now. Like reading has become like a competition where that's not what reading is. Reading is
That's not what education is.
that it's becoming
That's not what
these-
education is. You
it's
can
becoming
read, but
ranking all these schools, like all of our
Yeah.
schools are ranked, and it's just like, wait, what was the point? Like, what are we doing? Like,
we don't need to win. We don't win education by having some great test score. That, I think we have to really question all of our information, where we get it, how we get it, why we're doing things, and
then going from like higher education of like picking schools like, oh well, this school's ranked this and this school's ranked this, and it's just like, wait, what? And you like it's becoming this confusing thing of like, does my degrees have less value?
it depends.
Does education have less value? What is, and I feel like that's something that we have to determine as a society of the structures of education of why is education important? And I feel like that's a good place for us to leave off with our conversation. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for responding to my text messages.
Anytime. I am so honored and thankful and grateful to be here. And you are doing incredible work and you're going to change the world. And so is your team. And I'm so happy to be part of it. Thanks for having me.
Okay, no problem. And that was Jessica Wakula, guys. Thank you all for tuning in to today's episode. We had some incredible guests, insightful discussions, and remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Join us next week for more engaging conversations and inspiring guests. Like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Ta-ta!